Good morning and happy Nurses Day or National Nurses Day. So, if you know a nurse in any capacity, make sure you say thank you and that today is their day, as well as even if you have a doctor's appointment today or you see a nurse, just say thank you because it's their National Day. Today, what we're going to be able to do is explain the significance of Florence and the advance in architecture and engineering during the Renaissance. Super excited for this lesson because I've been to Florence before and some of these places that we're going to look at today, I've actually been to. And so I'm excited. But we're going to have a quick do now guided practice, and then the remainder will be your independent practice. So for your do now, you have another political cartoon, and you want to tell me based off the options what the main idea of the cartoon is. So 1, South Korea has more mineral resources than North Korea. 2, South Korea has flourished while North Korea is struggling to survive. 3, North Koreans have chosen to separate themselves from South Koreans. Or 4, North Korea was devastated by the war with South Korea. So go ahead and take a minute and analyze the political cartoon, and then we will go over the answer and the rationale for the answer. All right, so the answer to this is 2. South Korea has flourished while North Korea is struggling to survive. Now, first off, you can tell they're separated because of the barbed wire fence in between the border. The other way, or I'm sorry, the way that you can tell that South Korea has flourished and North Korea is struggling to survive is South Korea has all of this food, the land is nice and clean, plenty of resources, or as far as food, but you go to North Korea and you see a very, very thin person, almost a skeleton, sitting at a table with little to no, actually no food at all, with just bones and a dirty table. So that tells us that South Korea is doing well while North Korea is not. All right, we're going to go right into guided practice. We don't really have any notes today. The first thing we're going to read about is just Florence in general, so you have an idea of the place that we're talking about. On the right in the screen is the Palazzo Vecchio. This is a government palace. I've been there. I actually sang there when I went to Italy. Very, very pretty inside and still functional. Florence was Italy's leading cultural center during the Renaissance. The city was the birthplace of the great poet Dante Alighieri, and we'll talk about him later. The famed painter and sculptor Michelangelo grew up there, and so did the brilliant thinker and artist Leonardo da Vinci. Other Florentines, such as the sculptor Donatello, also made their mark on the Renaissance. Sounds familiar. We're going to start talking about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. What made Florence so special? One answer is its location. As you remember from last chapter, in Renaissance times, Italy was divided into city-states. Excuse me, Florence was one of these city-states. The city's location on the Arno River made it an important center for trade and commerce. Florence became the hub of woolen cloth trading for all of Europe. About 100,000 residents lived inside the city walls. So thinking about both paragraphs, I don't want you to just look at what comes after this sentence because it says what made Florence so special. I want you to look at both paragraphs, both. What made Florence so special? So taking into account both paragraphs, go ahead and answer question number 1, and then we'll come back together. All right, so I did tie in both. So it says, what made Florence so special? One answer, its location. So I said, due to its location, Florence was a flourishing cultural center as well as a center for trade and business. So I did add the location in, which is right after that. But I also mentioned about the cultural center and then made it an important center for trade and commerce. So I added both of those things in there. So there really should be kind of 3 key points here you're hitting: location, cultural or culture, and trade. Okay, so that's why I say take into account both paragraphs, because it's not just because of its location. There's lots of places that are in great locations, but that's not just why it became a special place. So go ahead and pause and get that if you need to. All right, we're going to keep going with guided before independent because I want to do some cause and effect work with you. The banking and wool trades created wealth that supported intense cultural activity in Florence. The city and its rich residents could afford to be patrons. There's our vocab word from the other day, patrons of talented artists and thinkers. The Medicis, for example, spent lavish sums on art, which means lavish amounts of money on art. And this is actually them over here. Their home was a gathering place for artists, philosophers, and poets. Michelangelo once lived for a time in the Medici household, where he mingled with other artists. Over time, the work produced by Florentines inspired still more creative activity. People learned from one another, and they sometimes competed to produce even greater work. Florentines were also influenced by ideas from other places. The city drew travelers from many parts of the world. Some came to do business, some came to study art. With Florence's, I'm sorry, I keep yelling, Master Artist. Others came to learn at the city's schools and libraries. These visitors brought new ideas, goods, and technologies that enlivened the city. Florentines were also inspired by the freedom of ideas that was at the core of humanism. Remember that humanists prized the individual and tried to look with fresh eyes at nature and human society as well as the classics. You'll see the influence of humanism throughout this chapter. So our cause is Florentines were inspired and travelers were drawn to Florence. So what is the effect of people being inspired and travelers being drawn? And kind of think, and it's not necessarily a quote, a lot of people in their work have just, instead of putting things in their own words or paraphrasing, they've just kind of been quoting the text. I want you to think about this in your own words and again, draw from and take in account for all three paragraphs, not just maybe one particular sentence in the paragraph. So go ahead and pause. All right, so we have ideas, goods, and technology begins to grow, or began, I should say, began to grow and spread in Florence, okay? And so this takes from all paragraphs. We have ideas here, and we have goods and technology here. Okay? So all of this again takes from all three paragraphs, not just one particular sentence. So go ahead and pause and get that down. All right, for independent practice, you're going to read, and we talked about Florence in general, and now you're going to dive into advances in architecture and engineering. So one of these here is the dome of the Duomo di Santa Maria del Fiore. This is in Florence. The Duomo means like the main, it's a big church, and I've been there and it's awesome. Brett's also been there too a couple times, which I'm kind of jealous of. But you're going to read this and you're going to learn a couple Italian words in this text too. And so here you're going to talk about how humanism affected architecture. The next page, you're going to read more about engineering. You're going to describe how classical ideas influenced the Renaissance architecture. How was Brunelleschi an engineering genius? And then you're going to take a closer look at Brunelleschi's dome, which built this, is the concept for this Duomo. And then you're going to answer, how did Brunelleschi build a dome that would not collapse? Okay, so for my architecture people, my artists, this is a layout of how he built that dome, and they actually haven't been able to replicate exactly the exact way that he's done that since that time. And then you are all done. Tomorrow we will continue to talk about art, and it should be a nice, interesting day, especially for my art fans out there. And I will see y'all tomorrow. Bye.